Brilliant. Well, welcome along to Martin's Classic Rock Show. And I've got a very special guest with me. His name is Keith St. John. Good afternoon, Keith. How are you doing?
Martin, good afternoon. And you are a very special host as well. So two special people were like twins today.
Brilliant. So, well, let's have a good interview then and find out all about you.
Right on.
Well, I'd like to start with, do you come from a musical background?
Yes and no. I grew up around the New York area. So, there's tons of music around. There's the Metropolitan Opera. There's all the Broadway shows, off-Broadway shows. There's jazz clubs all over the place. My grandparents and my extended family, other than my parents, were super into music. But my parents were kind of in the box. They weren't so that way. So, yeah, the background was a little bit out of the house, but it was out there. And in my school, I played in the school band, the school orchestra, and the marching band, and all these kind of things. So, in that way, yes. So, but I guess I went to it. It didn't just come to me, if that makes any sense.
It does, yes. Yeah, quite does. How old were you when you discovered music, when you discovered you wanted to do something with it?
Well, Martin, I think I kind of was born a little bit late, and I say that because the word hippie kind of maybe applies to me in a way that when I got my first record deal, it was kind of by chance. I was recording things of mine, but I wasn't really intending to have anything that fantastic happen right away. And then getting shipped off to LA from New York was just somebody else's idea as well, some management and the record label. And I just kept saying yes, and it just sort of kept snowballing from there. I know that's a very generalized story, but I think, the answer to your actual question is I was always doing music as a serious sort of hobby and just something I loved doing, apart from my academics and everything else. And when it took off, I don't know if even at that point I was considering it a career, so to speak. So I was just having a lot of fun with it and getting a lot of attention, and things were growing and building, and then they just kept on going, and I just kept on saying yes. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. Want to join my band? Yeah. Okay. Kind of like that. So I know my answer is a little bit curious, but that was all happening right in my early 20s when, because I was in engineering school, which I was also pretty interested in as well. But, the music thing took some turns, and I just decided to go with it.
You can't really say no, can you? If it's something you love doing.
Not when you love something, right? And you're doing it, and all of a sudden you get to this point where you finally discovered how to step up a little bit and show your stuff off to some of the people in the actual industry, and they say yes, and you're like, I didn't quite plan that, but yes, I'll quit everything else right now. Let's go.
Well, this is
so
it.
Sorry.
That's the way to do it, isn't it? If you like doing something and somebody offers you the chance, you've got to go with it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so in that way, I would, as an addendum to that answer, I probably, didn't feel the need to really struggle and focus and make a definite goal because, things just sort of kept happening on their own a lot. And along the way, I even, I tried a few other sidelines, but music kept always taking over. And, I'm still there. So here we are.
What is it? The music is an international language. Everybody understands it, and they can listen to it, whether they understand the words or not.
True, I believe it.
Who were your musical influences?
Well, um, well, my extended family, like I said, they were a little bit more artsy and musical, and I heard a lot of folk music, and they were playing, they were playing like '60s music and early '70s. So, and of course, the Beatles were a huge influence on early rock and roll, and the folkies, from New York, Simon and Garfunkel, and Crosby, Stills and Nash, from LA, and those kind of bands. They appealed to me. And then from being in school, and being in band and being a marching band, and, my influences are into, Tchaikovsky's one of my favorite composers, classical. You got Rodgers and Hammerstein, who wrote a lot of music for shows and music for artists. Just a lot of real classic traditional kind of songwriters and show tune writers. And then the early rock and roll, like, the Beatles. And I didn't quite get the blues in the beginning. I wasn't there. Like I said, coming from the background that I did which was more classical and melodic. And, show tunes are basically usually pretty melodic. It took a little while, and America wasn't really doing the blues. You didn't hear a Coca-Cola ad with a blues song in it yet back in those days. But once I got into the hard rock, and people wanted me to sing more and more, because first I was playing drums, and then they brought me out front and I started singing. I started getting into the more bluesy singers, and I love Otis Redding and Sam Cooke and Aretha Franklin, and of course the rockers that came out, Glenn Hughes and Robert Plant, Paul Rogers. I mean, there's a lot of them, and I like to sit and learn from just about anybody new that I hear, especially singers of that magnitude, that have touched so many people. You figure, these people really have something going on. Let me get into this. And then you wind up loving it and buying all the records anyway, just because you love the stuff. So I guess I have a big sponge in my brain that likes to that likes a lot of variety of stuff. And in the long run, that makes for easy songwriting. Because there's always so much to draw from. I never feel like I'm at a loss or at a blank when I'm sitting down with someone or by myself and writing a song. So,
yeah, that's good. I was lucky enough a few weeks ago to do an interview with Ian Haugland of Europe, their drummer. That was an interesting interview. How did you get your big break? Can you remember?
Well, I'm not sure what the biggest break was, but, beginning into the sort of the world of I guess, being a pedestrian and being a professional in the industry, I believe it or not, I used to jam in a store called, well, you have them here, 7-Eleven. And they, out eastern Long Island, where I was going to school, and I used to go there late night with a guitarist, and we'd work on songs, and they'd let us sit in the back and play. And this was a major thoroughfare coming out to Long Island from, western Long Island and New York City. So, sometimes other musicians would stop in, and they'd come and jam with us. Well, anyway, there was a guy who used to stumble in around 4:30 in the morning most of the time that we were in there, and he owned a restaurant. And he was a big Irish guy named George, and his place was called George's Handlebar. He had a big handlebar mustache. And he always said, he was a little tipsy, and he always said, "Hey, you guys, if you ever get something together, some of the guys I grew up with are big guys in the music business, man. Let me know, and I'll give you some telephone numbers and this and that." So one day I finally made a demo at some guy's, a studio he built in his garage or something. And it was the first demo I had made of something of mine, and I had it with me, and I had one cassette copy, and that guy came in that night. We were out there at the 7-Eleven, and he gave me a name and an address, and it was pouring rain. I could picture it right now as I'm telling it to you. It was pouring rain out, and I decided there wasn't navigation in the telephone. We didn't have the smartphones yet, right? And so I got the Thomas Guide there, is what they call it, from the 7-Eleven, the map thing. I just found where his address was, and I drove to the house and left it there in an envelope. Well, 2 weeks later, I got a phone call, an arrangement. Some guys came out in a limo, and they pulled up to my place, and I walked out, and I walked up, and they just kind of rolled the window down like nobody got out of the car. And they said, well, you sound great. And I maybe expected to meet them, but they were just like, we just needed to see you, man. You look great too, man. Can you get yourself to 75 Rockefeller Plaza next Thursday? And which was Atlantic Records. And that's what started it off. That was the moment.
That's a very interesting story.
I was trying to shorten it up, but it's kind of a little, over the hills and through the woods to grandmother's house. But thank you for listening.
Yeah, it's very interesting. What's it like working with the many bands? You must have worked with quite a few bands, I believe.
Well, I'll tell you, it's definitely given me kind of a bird's eye view of various parts of the industry. And I realize in rock, it's kind of, it's not a gigantic world, at least from the era that most of the guys I've worked with have come from, that whole 80s hard rock and heavy metal thing. And then, working with Montrose, those guys started in the 70s. And that's even a smaller world. So, I guess I learned a lot. It solved a lot of mysteries. Growing up on the East Coast in America, there's really no, you have no idea where the record labels are or the TV stations or how those people got on the radio, quote unquote. In LA, they all know because they can see Capitol Records and Geffen Records right there and Universal Studios. They get it, growing up with that. But, it also just, showed me how everything was done, but right there in a first-person point of view, getting together with Ronnie Montrose and going to some of the studios that they recorded that first Montrose record or second Montrose record, and et cetera, and meeting those folks and, going up to the Bay Area, hanging out with whoever we were hanging out with that week, Jefferson Airplane guys, or just so many Bay Area people, the Steve Miller Band, et cetera, just kind of getting to know people and seeing what the path was. Like, you're kind of asking me what was the path from A to B. Well, a lot of those people back then, they were growing up when there weren't any rock stars yet. So their path was even different. It even came from something even sounding a little bit more obtuse. They really needed to fall in love with the guitar from something else, and then rock and roll started and grabbed them, kind of a thing. So that's one little insight, but there's a lot of them, and it taught me a lot. And I like learning about people. I like learning about cultures, and I'm very interested in that kind of thing. And I'm not super, what would you say? Conniving's the wrong word. I'm not super, I'm not just hanging out trying to learn how to get the next rung on the ladder. That's never been my MO. I meet people, and those are the most important things to me, relationships with people.
Yeah.
So, and there's been some great ones with these artists, I gotta say.
Yeah, I think it's better to wait and see what comes along. You seem to have done quite well so far.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And have you listened to Montrose music before?
Not for a long time, but we've just getting back into it now. It's like some great music out there.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I don't want to keep going up on that tangent because there's a few others that you might be a little bit more familiar with.
Yeah, I think you've been with quite a few bands. I believe you've even been with Sweet, haven't you, in America?
I actually have, yes. And it's unfortunate that the original vocalist, passed on so early in a way because, he was really great, and I don't think anybody could ever replace him. And I was lucky enough to meet Steve Priest, who, they were a pretty sarcastic lot, I would have to say. In their time, they were, if you look back at Sweet, the quote-unquote videos that they made back then, this is before MTV and all that, they made promotional videos back in the 70s for their stuff. You look back to like the Ed Sullivan Show and the Doors and Jim Morrison or the Beatles or something, and the studio audience is listening to the album most of the time, and the band's just sort of playing to it, and lip syncing and this and that. But some of the artists are really good at not revealing that. They're really kind of mimicking the stuff perfectly, so it really looks real. And I cracked up the first time I saw the Sweet, because they were really purposely doing the wrong thing, but they were doing it in a way where the cameraman wouldn't really understand that was wrong. The drummer would be playing backwards. He'd be hitting, where all the cymbals were being hit, he'd hit the tom-toms, and vice versa. For the snare drum, he'd hit like one of the cymbals, and the technical crew wasn't catching on to it, and they were just sort of winking at each other. I thought that was very interesting and hilarious. And I'm like, these guys really, they knew that, they knew how to keep having fun, and that, it didn't matter. The power of their music was so good, and they believed in themselves and their songs that, they figured they could just get away with anything they wanted to, even when the record label was like, okay, we have to make one of these promotional videos. And Steve Priest, the guy I met, was probably the king of sarcasm and just doing the unexpected. So it was a gas hanging out with him.
Yeah, it sounds as if you had a lot of fun times.
Yeah, like I said, it's about people. It's meeting interesting characters. I would have loved to meet. Here's a sarcastic character with Luke Costello, right? He seemed pretty sarcastic and wacky. Probably would have liked meeting that guy. And he wasn't a music guy, but yeah. Was that you or me, or are you still there?
Yeah, Martin? I'm still here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. My phone just beeped. Sorry.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to interview Andy Scott last year, and he was saying it's all about the fun. So it probably runs in the band.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about the songs, and they had such a strong collection of songs. That wasn't a band with one or two hits. That was a band with 12 or 15 songs that people really knew. So yeah, they were strong songwriters.
Yeah, and the band's still going strong now, and everybody that goes to the gigs, biggest part of them know all the words, nearly all the songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
What other projects have you got in the pipeline at the moment? I believe you're with
I'm in a band called Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
And they 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 were big on MTV and in the what they used to call the hair metal scene, and right at the end of the 80s, like 88, 89, and their first record shipped gold because the test single did so well. So they really did well. But they were 88, 89, and right about 90, 91, things really changed in rock and roll. You know, for hard rock, things went to grunge, you know, in the mainstream. And that band kind of disbanded at that point. And when they did, the drummer, who was very good and a lot of people wanted him, was hired by the Scorpions to be their new drummer. And so he spent, I think, 17 years in the Scorpions. And one of the guitar players joined a band called Warrant for a while. And they just kind of dispersed over the years. And the singer moved back to Germany, which is where he's from. The other guys are from the States. And later down the road, when the drummer that joined the Scorpions parted way with the Scorpions, he had an idea that they put the original Kingdom Come back together, because this kind of music was back in a big way. All the 80s hair bands and the mainstream 80s rock and all that stuff. So the singer told him that he was retired. He wasn't really into it anymore. And then they called me. And we've been doing it since 2018. So that's something I'm doing. I'm doing most of the shows at this point, but I come in and out of this production called Raiding the Rock Vault in Las Vegas, and it's like been voted the best of Las Vegas for like 10 years in a row, and it's a historical walk through rock and roll from, you know, like the Who and Jimi Hendrix, and then it ends in the 80s with Def Leppard and Van Halen and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting show that I'm doing. And that's it. I've got my band called Burning Rain with myself and Doug Aldridge as the co-founders and the main songwriters. And then we've had a few different rhythm sections over the years. Right now we have Blas Elias on drums. He's originally from the band Slaughter. And a guy named Brad Lang on the bass. He's from a band called YNT. We've got 4 records out, and we're waiting for the window when we can all get the time to make the 5th. So I'm hoping for that sometime soon.
Yes, we're in the process of checking out your albums and getting them. We've listened to a few, but we intend to get the rest of them. Awesome. Sounds good.
For those out there that might be interested in checking out Burning Rain, or heard of myself or Mr. Doug Aldridge or any more of those cats, the last record was called Face the Music, and Doug and I actually came here to this venue that we're going to be playing tonight over in Edinburgh, Bannerman's, in fact, in this format, which is an acoustic duo format, and we were supporting the Face the Music record. The record before that was called Epic Obsession. You can look that one up. And the one before that was called Pleasure to Burn. And the first Burning Rain album was just, number 1, the band's self-titled album.
Yes, I think we've got Epic Sessions. It's very good. We're really enjoying that. Is there any...
Sounds good. One of my favorites.
Yes, it's brilliant, so we're looking forward to the rest of it. Is there any band that you haven't worked with, or you'd like to work with?
Well, I haven't worked with most of the bands out there, only a few, and then some of my own, but a small, tiny fraction of a percentage of the bands that I've actually worked with, because there's so many bands out there over the years. But I can't say there's particularly anybody I'd like to work with that I haven't. I guess I would have pursued the possibilities if there was if a band's got a great singer, there would be no reason for me to think, hey, I want to become the singer of that band. I mean, because they've got a singer. So, but these things happen sometimes. People split up and, or like I said, somebody retires or whatnot. And then I get asked to step in. I probably say yes to too many projects and should just stick to writing on my own terms and on my own turf, because I seem to flourish a little bit more during those times. So,
do you tend to write your own music for your own albums for Burning Rain, or do you have somebody help you?
No, we just write them on our own, Doug and I.
That sounds good. How did you come to tour with Jack Frost?
Well, Jack has been a good friend for several years, and I never was in a band with Jack, but he was a big Ronnie Montrose fan, and after Ronnie had passed, and I started the Ronnie Montrose Remembered celebration concerts down at the annual NAMM festival in Anaheim, California, where they have over 120,000 people show up a year. Jack just showed up backstage one year and said, "Hey man, I really love what you're doing," and he gave me this old 70s Montrose tour shirt, t-shirt that was in great shape but a little bit worn, and I was like, "You really want to give this to me, man?" He's like, "Yeah, I want you to have this, man. It just, appreciate what you do." And I'm like, I was kind of blown away. I was like, we were complete strangers. And then, over the years, I ran into him a few other times, and he was just always being really helpful and really nice. And then, I found out he was in a few named bands here and there. And so when he had heard I was doing this thing, and I hadn't really put the other person together for this duo yet, for doing this guitar thing, he just called me up and said, "Hey man, I heard you're doing this acoustic duo tour coming up through the grapevine." He's like, "I really want to do it with you." I'm like, "You do?" And I said, "That's a lot to learn for you. I mean, but if you're down for it, let's do it." He just had such a good vibe to him. Like I said, I'm always into people, kind of a humanist, I guess, in a way. And there's too many stories to go through, but Jack has always just been, a real positive guy, and, never asking for anything, and never up to, just trying to scheme his way into anything. It's just always just really, "Nope, I don't need anything, man. Do your thing, but I'll help you any way you want." And so I was like, "Yeah, Jack, let's do this, man. Let's do something together." And that's all that was.
Well, that sounds interesting. That's the best way, I think.
Yeah. So I still don't know a ton about it, but I'm learning a lot now that we're hanging out in close quarters and, getting it together. We've had to do some hanging for some rehearsals over in New York before we left the States, and then and now we're here.
Well, that's it. This is your first date in the UK, I believe, tonight, is it?
Yes, it is. 100%.
That's good. So we've caught you at the beginning of your UK tour.
Yes, you did. You did. And I'm glad you did, because, I can't rely on, talking about what happened last night, telling you stories, from the venue. I have to dig in and really, I guess, talk about more sides of myself and more personal things, which, isn't the easiest to do sometimes. When you're in a spot like this, we just showed up and we're kind of like, all right, here we are. Here's the first night. How's it going to be? Let's make sure we have all these songs together. And but taking a break to you has given me my mind like a nice aside to all that. And going back in history has been a nice, I don't know, maybe calming effect that I'm separate from all the mayhem here for a second.
Well, I'm pleased it's given you a bit of a break. It's been very good for me as well. For everybody to learn all about you. What was it?
Love it.
How did Burning Rain come about? How did you manage to start that and get with Doug?
Well, Doug he was a member of the band called Lion, and Lion had quite a following for a while in different places in the world, one of them being Japan. And Doug had done a few things over in Japan, and I hadn't done anything over there yet, and I didn't really know anything about Doug Aldrich at that point. But a mutual friend and musician, a guy who was in one of his bands and was also in one of my bands, a bass player, he knew Doug was looking for a new singer to start a new project with, and he just introduced us. And Doug and I are both kind of birds of the same feather. We're both very serious about songwriting and just kind of that whole mission to get songs written and produced. So when we got together, I think in the first day we got together, we wrote 3 songs. Just at least loose structure and the main ideas of the chorus and whatnot, and the main riffs. And we quickly finished them up. And we already had a manager in mind that could probably work with us after, the first time we talked. And he also had a lot of experience with the Japanese record labels. So he shopped it. The first place we shopped our stuff was over in Japan. And we got a deal with one of the majors there pretty much right away. And that was it. We put the rest of the band together, and we, wrote the rest of the album's worth of songs and got in the studio and just went on task. We didn't know each other in any way before that, but we just kind of came together musically. And then the relationship and the friendship and everything else built after that.
Oh, that's good. What is the current tour about? Is it about anything or just
The current tour, well, it came up with me because we haven't done any. Doug's been in a band called Dead Daisies for, the last bunch of years, and they're doing great, and I like them, and he sounds good in it, and I've been doing Kingdom Come, and so we haven't really done Burning Rain in a while, and I haven't had a chance to really sing this stuff live, and I was kind of missing doing it. And the last time we did it, like I said, we were over here doing an acoustic duo tour in this style. So I thought to myself, well, maybe without going through a whole big hullabaloo, I could do something and actually sing some of these songs again. And I'll just make it about what people know from my career. We'll do some Montrose songs, we'll do some Lynch Mob songs, whatever. Maybe even throw in a Nazareth tune or two, and for sure some Kingdom Come. And there's been fans from different eras, and there's Burning Rain fans out here. I know because we played 5 cities in the UK last time we were here. So I figured, let me try to put something together, and I'll kind of just base it on me, but they'll know that we're going to be doing a fair amount of Burning Rain songs, and they can come down and check those things out, and I'll have fun doing it. So that was kind of it.
Brilliant. We're looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, I think it should be. I'm looking really forward to tonight, and I can't wait to get in there and tear it up.
Rock Bannermans.
Yes, the mighty Bannermans.
This is it. How can people find your music?
Well, they can easily find me. Just most people these days are on the social media, Facebook or Instagram, and just search for me, Keith St. John, or you can go to keithstjohn.com, the website, and that'll take you to some links where you can find out more about my background and what's gone on in the past and is going on now. And there's my Wikipedia that does a little historical walkthrough. So I'd say those are the first places to go if you've never heard of Keith St. John and you want to check him out.
You'll know where to go now.
Absolutely.